British Hong Kong began not with a grand vision but with trade, conflict and imperial ambition. In the early 1800s, Britain's thirst for Chinese goods led to a trade imbalance, which it tried to fix by flooding China with opium. The resulting crisis sparked the First Opium War, ending in British victory and the Treaty of Nanking in 1842. China ceded Hong Kong Island to Britain, an ideal deep-water port and strategic outpost. Further wars brought more land, the Kowloon Peninsula and Stonecutters Island, expanding British control over Victoria Harbour. Each acquisition reflected China's military weakness and Britain's imperial strength. These territories, taken by force and treaty, became the legal foundation of British rule for over a century. Hong Kong's unique blend of Chinese culture and British institutions began to take shape, but the sense of permanence was an illusion. One last, much larger piece of land would soon change everything. The stage was set for a future defined by deadlines and uncertainty. In 1898, Britain secured a 99-year lease for the new territories, vastly expanding Hong Kong's size. Unlike earlier acquisitions, this was a rental, with a hard expiration, June 30th, 1997. For decades, the deadline seemed irrelevant as the new territories remained rural and lightly populated. But after World War II, Hong Kong's population exploded and the new territories became essential, home to millions, vital infrastructure, and the city's lifeblood. By the late 1970s, the looming deadline threatened economic paralysis. Banks hesitated, businesses stalled, and uncertainty grew. The colony was now a single integrated organism, impossible to separate. Returning only the leased land would cripple the rest. Keeping just Hong Kong Island and Kowloon was unworkable. The 99-year lease, once a footnote of empire, had become a ticking time bomb. Britain faced a stark reality. The future of all Hong Kong was now tied to the fate of the new territories. The countdown to 1997 had begun. The question was no longer if, but how the handover would happen. By the 1980s, China was resurgent, no longer the weak power of the past. Under Deng Xiaoping, China demanded the return of all Hong Kong, rejecting the old, unequal treaties as illegitimate. When Margaret Thatcher tried to negotiate continued British administration, Deng flatly refused. China's position was clear. Sovereignty over the entire territory would resume in 1997, no exceptions. If talks failed, China could simply take Hong Kong by force or cut off vital supplies. Britain had no military leverage. The colony was indefensible. The negotiations shifted. Britain's goal became securing the best possible terms for Hong Kong's people. China held all the cards, but both sides wanted a stable transition. The era of British rule was ending, not with a fight, but with a search for compromise. The only question left: what would the future look like for Hong Kong? In 1982, Britain fought for the Falkland Islands, but not for Hong Kong. Why? The answer lay in geography, power, and law. The Falklands were remote and defensible. Hong Kong was a small outpost on China's doorstep, impossible to protect. Any military defense would have been futile and catastrophic for the city's millions. Legally, Britain's right to the new territories was set to expire. There was no international support for staying. The people of the Falklands were British citizens who wanted to remain British. Hong Kong's population was overwhelmingly Chinese with no right of abode in the UK. The moral and political calculus was different. Defending the Falklands was about sovereignty and citizens. Hong Kong was about managing the end of empire. The world had changed. Colonialism was out, pragmatism was in. For Hong Kong, negotiation, not war, was the only path forward. The handover was inevitable. With no leverage, Britain focused on negotiating the best possible deal for Hong Kong's future. The result, the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration, a landmark treaty registered with the UN. Its core promise: one country, two systems. Hong Kong would become a special administrative region, retaining its capitalist economy, legal system, and freedoms for 50 years after 1997. China gained sovereignty, but Hong Kong's way of life would be preserved, at least on paper. The agreement calmed economic fears and allowed Britain to exit with dignity. For China, a stable, prosperous Hong Kong was a gateway to the world and a model for future reunification with Taiwan. The deal was hailed as innovative, a rare win-win in the twilight of empire, but it was also a leap of faith, built on promises and mutual self-interest. The world watched as the countdown to 1997 continued. The future of Hong Kong would soon be put to the test. Economics played a decisive role in Britain's decision to hand over Hong Kong. By the 1980s, British business interests were shifting to mainland China. Jeopardizing Hong Kong would threaten access to this vast new market. Major companies needed stability, not confrontation. The decline of the British Empire made holding on to colonies politically untenable. World opinion had turned against colonialism. Most Hong Kong residents lacked full British citizenship, limiting Britain's moral obligation and making a refugee crisis unthinkable. The legal deadline, China's power, military realities, and economic interests all pointed in one direction. The handover was not a single choice, but the sum of inescapable realities. Hong Kong's story began with opium and empire, but ended with pragmatism and the hope of continuity. The world would soon see if promises made would become promises kept. The fate of Hong Kong was now in new hands.